Thank you so much. So firstly, let me start by congratulating His Excellency, our new president, Advocate Duma Boko, on the win, but also to say that it really is a pivotal moment for our country in its democracy, but also in just the recent elections. And let me first start by sharing that one of the pivotal things that we have to recognize is in terms of the growth rate of registration. We saw that a lot of young people registered for elections. From the 1.7 eligible voters, 80% mark was reached in terms of the number of people that registered, but then also you correlated with the majority population of our country is made by young people, over 60%. So we could see, and we need to look at this a little bit more to say that the voices of young people as part of the elections, but also as part of wanting to see democracy in place, there certainly was, that element where, a lot of young people were interested, were encouraged to go out and vote to have their voices heard.
All right. We usually hear these conversations, people saying young people are not interested in voting and all these things. What could have changed this time around? Because, yes, we have been longing. People say we have been longing for change according to what we hear in the ground. We've been longing for change, but young people have already contributed to this. This is what mostly young people have done, and you already mentioned the fact that they are, this time around, their participation is significantly seen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the things that I think is important is the more aware and the more education that young people can get in civic engagement to understand more around the power of voting. I think, particularly with these elections, we were seeing, young people interested in civic participation to understand more on where, are the party manifestos and to learn a little bit more. And I think what's interesting now is the access to technology that young people have, right, in terms of social media, in terms of being tuned to TV, as well as radio, where we can be able to really learn a lot more on the issues that were being discussed by different parties. So all is to say that we are entering into a new wave where we see young people really interested, but also participating in politics and understanding that their voice is by voting, and we saw that from this period of the elections.
Okay, what could have been lacking? Is it political education, or they were just not interested, or not knowing what the power they had?
I think it is multifaceted, and it really requires us to reflect on what happened. The first is recognizing that there needs to be more education and awareness on political parties, but also understanding the power of the vote. But I think more, especially with these elections, young people wanted change, and a lot of them, were anchoring around the issues that many young people are facing, unemployment being a big one. And we heard a lot of cries, and even just from interacting with young people, to say that we want jobs, right? And therefore, for us to be able to grow and, become the 21st century leaders, something needs to change or be looked at a little bit more. So I think that need and that desire for significant improvement in the lives of young people is what really motivated them to raise their hands and go and cast their vote.
Right. You partly answered the question that I was about to ask you, Ore. What are the factors factors that really motivated young people? What is it that they are going through to say, this time around, I want to see how powerful I am. I want to employ the person that I can hear they're appealing to me.
Yeah.
What are those things that are pressing young people?
Yeah, so we know that there are significant issues as it relates to young people, and a lot of them are mirrored around socio-economic programming and policies, where young people are unemployed, right? Botswana, has one of the highest, unemployment rates, especially for young people. So we know that the issue around being unemployed and underemployed is a big concern. We also know that young people want access to healthcare services that are youth-friendly, and that can be able to support young people throughout, their journey in terms of their health. We hear that our education system, which is a cornerstone of development, there needs to be, more that's being done in terms of our education system as well as our policies. Because when you look at the trends for education, particularly in Botswana, from JCE to BGCSE, this is Form 5, we see that our test scores are declining on year end. So this means that there needs to be a significant improvement just in terms of education, but also vocational training, because that is also the next vanguard to say, how can we use our hands to be able to create our jobs and also to employ ourselves and others. So there are quite a number of issues that young people are saying that they want to see, and we're hoping, with our new government, we can be able to channel some of the feedback as well as the important issues so that they can be addressed by our new government.
Most definitely. Now, in what ways can political parties better connect with young voters to address their concerns? We've already understood that they've got their concerns and they've voiced out, as we've already witnessed with the elections, that they are frustrated. And there's that disparity between young people and political parties. What is it that can political parties do to mend this relationship, to understand their needs and, their concerns?
Yes, so I think the first one is meeting young people where they're at and creating more spaces for open dialogue, but also to really hear the concerns and take that feedback into action. And we need, more spaces where young people could be able to dialogue with the leadership and ensuring that we can create those channels of communication. I think there's also a role that civil society plays. We know that one of the mandates of civil society is to be able to support government programming and also advocate and lobby for youth development issues. So I do think there's a role in which we need to connect more with civil society and see, how we can bridge, the political stance or rather the political leaders, and also meet, with civil societies, because I think that is where, a lot of action and supporting the government is actually happening at that level. And then lastly, I would just say that we need more young people representation in key decision-making roles. And this is not, to say it's not sort of young people versus elders, but when you get a young person to sit at the same table as with a decision and policy maker, it significantly encourages us to be able to have a voice and also ensure that, what we decide and what we discuss is being taken to action. So we really need to see more inclusive leadership where the inclusion requires a lot of young people to be involved in that.
Most definitely, because as you've already mentioned, meet young people where they are, because most of the policies and laws were being made or being conversed during quarter meetings where mostly young people are not there. So they should come with strategies to see how they can do this. But when exactly could they do this? Because we have seen the advent of political education and contesting young people towards elections. This should be towards that, or should it be a lifestyle?
Yes, so absolutely. I think what's important is to be able to create as many channels as much as possible to engage young people. Not just when there's a commemoration or not when there's an event, to call a youth pito. Where we can be able to address, and tackle some of these issues. So I do think this is something that should be consistent and continued, throughout the next, 5 years, to be able to engage young people and meaningfully engage young people, because that's also important.
Most definitely. Now, how do community organizations, we are talking about churches, we are talking about different organizations within our communities, can contribute to encouraging youth involvement in politics, and how can their efforts be enhanced? Because we understand that in these different organizations, and that is where they spend most of their times. You earlier on mentioned the fact that our organizations, our communities shouldn't, most of the times they ought to support the current government to say, these are the policies, this is what we are in line with. How can we enhance and make sure that they also contribute?
Yes, no, absolutely. So let me first start by saying that change and whatever that you want to be able to see different begins with yourself.
Yeah.
And we know that there are different, community groups and community organizations that play a role in shaping self. And therefore, these are important structures, not only for politics, but also to speak at individual level, but also to say that even, within yourself as a person, how can I make a difference? Because at the end of the day, we want to, we want a decent life. We also want to improve as people. So I do think there's a key role that community groups and civil society organizations play in shaping an individual, and also encouraging an individual to be able to do their part within, those structures. But just to say that they do play a key role in politics, in the sense of educating and making aware in terms of rights. I can give an example around the Constitution or even the Children's Act. And the question would be, how many young people know their rights, in terms of the Children's Act or even the Constitution? And I do think, that's a role in which civil society can play, to be able to disseminate information, but also to talk more broadly about rights and responsibilities of a young person at the end of the day.
Most definitely. Now, if you've just joined us, remember that I'm with Moitshepi Matsheng, co-founder of Youth Impact. We're talking about youth involvement, more especially in politics in general. Now, young people also are complaining most of the times that they have got no resources, they've got no support, especially from those who have been on this journey before. So what challenges do young people face when trying to engage politically, and what can be done to address these challenges?
Yeah, so there are a number of challenges that young people or any given society face. What is important is to also recognize that change begins with yourself. And it's important to be able to really absorb that, because if you want things to be different, you have to do things differently. And I do believe that in solving our societal issues and also providing, young people with a roadmap on development, it first, begins with you. It's not the government's responsibility or even your parents' responsibilities. We need to come together to want a better future for ourselves. But now more broadly around taking it on the political lens, what we are saying is, as young people, is that we do want meaningful engagement and also for us to be included in terms of our policies as well as programming. And therefore, it means that we need to involve as much and as many young people as much as possible to create those platforms where young people can be meaningfully engaged and included in key decision making roles. So for example, Re Ulibile, if you can see, right now, how kalebelela ma parliament, if you look at the members of parliament, as well as ma councillor, the question is, where are the young people? And we do need to do a further analysis, but from my read in terms of members of parliament, there's few representation of young people. And therefore, as we look back and look forward in terms of, you know, the next wave of our growth and development as our country, Botswana, we need to ensure that we can mold as well as grow as many young people to be represented in these key decision-making platforms.
Most definitely. Now, most of the times people say this should also be within our curriculum. This shouldn't be an education that you get when you grow up or when you already have got nothing to do now. How do we incorporate this to say you learn about politics from the young age until you understand it?
Absolutely. This one I'm very passionate about.
All right.
And the reason is, when you think about politics, it's all boils down to leadership.
Yeah.
And we know that leadership, you're molded from a young age. When you're in school, you are nominated as a prefect or a head girl or head boy. There's also SRCs, right? These are structures that mold a young person to be able to understand leadership. And therefore, when you think about civic education, this means, you know, teaching young people about their rights, responsibilities, including also politics. It should start from a young age. And we need to be able to take the curriculum to, you know, more on the, you know, from primary school stage, right, up to junior and secondary, because it's an important step on understanding leadership, but also understanding our rights and policies. So I'm, you know, advocating and strongly believe that civic education should really begin at a young age.
Most definitely. We are wrapping up our conversation now. How might the priorities of young voters in the recent election shape future political discussions and policies in Botswana? Because at the end of the day, they are not going to be taken lightly. Absolutely.
So democracy is saying by the people, for the young people, for the people. And this means that as people, we have a voice and we ensure that we share our voice through the polls, through electing and our leaders. And now what we need to do is to be able, as young people, to support the new government. And we are asking from the new government to be able to say, hear us, young people. We are here, we are ready, we want employment, we want jobs. As young people, we want improvement in our education and healthcare systems as a Botswana, because those are core to our development as a nation. We want access to electricity and water, and to be able to still, you know, ensure that we grow to the 21st century of the ideal young person.
All right. Most definitely. Thank you so much, Matsheng. And that is how we come to the end of our conversation. I understand this was, you know, the right time to discuss these conversations at the beginning of the new administration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you.
And that is how we come to the end of this conversation. And I'll be right back with the 7 o'clock news.
Welcome to beautiful Botswana, where the warmth of her people and wildlife is welcoming, where the vibrancy of her land echoes